I'm Dave Smith. Dave's over there. No, I'm Tom Oberheim. No, Tom's over there. Anyway, I'm here to talk about this funny thing I have called LinnStrument, and about the general class of what I'm calling multi-dimensional controllers. If people are still talking, just sort of, hit them or something, or shoot them. And I think this is a very exciting thing, so why don't I start off by playing a little bit of LinnStrument sound for you. Here it is. You can play it on a table, but I'm a guitar player, so I like to play it this way. Oh, I forgot. Could everyone please wish my wife, Ingrid, a happy birthday? Okay. Now that we've got the business things out of the way. So what's LinnStrument? It's this. It's a grid controller, as many of you know about, which has sort of become kind of a standard now. Everybody likes to play grids, except this one's a little bit unique in that it responds to pressure, like for example Ableton push, but also to the x-axis movements and the y-axis movements. And let me select the sound here in Logic Pro X. Okay, so what I've got here is the simplest possible synth sound you can have. All it is a pulse waveform with a low-pass filter and amplitude controls. There are no envelope generators, there are no LFOs. So I can play, put it on take off split keyboard mode. So I can respond to pressure here. And that's merely changing the amplitude and the low-pass filter frequency, and it's no resonance in the low-pass. But also I can move it in the x-axis. And the y-axis, in this case, it's controlling pulse width modulation. And it does it independently polyphonically. A few other sounds to tell you what that. That's just a simple yes, applaud. I'll play a few other sounds to show you what it can do. For example, here's Logic has this wonderful physical modeling synthesizer called Sculpture. So I'm going to play a cello sound, and nobody really used Sculpture all that much because everyone's playing it with on-off switches and Midi keyboard, but here's a cello sound. It's a physical model, so if you play too low, it doesn't resonate properly because the body won't resonate. Percussive sounds on it as well, like, oh, you know what I forgot to look up this sustain pedal. So it has an input for a dual sustain pedal, or dual pedal. I don't need I'm standing. He'll get that. Oh, thank you. Let's see, I'll go to register that. Actually, sometimes it's better just to play it flat. I'm still getting used to this, and I haven't really worked up any proper demo because it isn't released yet, but I'll show you what it's doing so far anyway. So, let's see, here's a clean electric guitar sound. Or here's a sax sound. And these are all just stock sounds out of a Logic Pro X. And now I'll play just a little bit of a thing I put together, but it's very simple, and once again, it's not a great demo. See all the pretty lights. Oh, I should say what I've got here is I've got the split keyboard mode. On this side, I have just the standard sustained part, but I have it running through this plugin that I make called Adrenaline Sync, which is a beat synced effects unit. And right now it's doing its it's applying a different filter tone to each pulse, right? Then over here I've got another sustained three-dimensional sound, but going through the guitar, the distortion section of the Adrenaline Sync as well on a separate instance. I'll tell you a little bit of what the lights do and all that. The lights are basically there to make it look pretty, but they also serve a function. Right now, if I take split keyboard mode off, the green lights are naturals, and these are all just chromatics. And in this case, I've set the rows to be offsets of fourths, just like the lower strings of a guitar. I'm a guitar player. So it has a nice benefit in this case that it's what they call isomorphic, that if I do a major triad, it's the same finger shape no matter what key I'm playing in, which is a nice advantage over the piano keyboard, for example. But I can change these lights. I can have the lights only light for the accidentals. I can have it be only for the pentatonic or whatever I want. And the blue lights are just the C at the beginning of each octave in this case. And I can change the colors. I can make that, see, it's all blue, it's all this blue, it's all pink, it's all red, yellow, green again. And then you can do it independently for the right keyboard split. So it's very nice. And the other thing it'll do, which is kind of nice, is that you can do, what was I thinking? Oh, I know, but you can change the low row so it does something else. Like it can be sustain pedal, or it can do repeat note effects, things like that. And it has input from a dual foot switch, so you can hook it up for sustain. So if I'm doing guitar parts or percussive parts, I can use it as a sustain pedal as you would with any keyboard of that type. What's nice too is that it has 3 modes of MIDI output. If you want to have independent if you want to have independent pitch bends and timbre control for each note, you have to use note per channel, which is the best standard for that right now, and works completely within MIDI. Unfortunately, the only synth that I know that works that way is Logic Pro X, which is why I'm using that. I bet it has so many other cool synths too, and it's only $200, so it's kind of a no-brainer. But there's also a compatibility mode, and that's what I'm using right now. And what that does is it sends everything on a single channel, but uses polypressure. And that way you get the individual pressure, but it takes the x-axis movements and y-axis movements only from the last note you play. So it always is given focus. And then there's a lowest compatibility mode for Ableton, but I was speaking to one of the gentlemen here, it was my impression that Ableton doesn't respond to polypressure, but he said maybe it does now. And so in the lowest compatibility mode, it's all sent on a single channel, and both X, Y, and Z movements are sent from the last touch, but you still get polyphony for notes, right? So you don't really have to have any sort of a special synth for it. In fact, I kind of like playing in the middle compatibility mode where it sends it with polypressure, and that's what I've been demonstrating here, because the nice advantage is if you're playing chords with one hand, all the notes stay in tune with each other. Whereas if you have independent pitch bend for each note in a chord, sometimes it's hard to hold those into tune. So one of the things, a nice feature too, is that there's the ability to, instead of just having chromatic scales, you can have any scale you want. You basically can delete any note within the scale. So as you go up and down the rows, you can be playing a pentatonic or a major or a minor or some funny scale, right? So anyway, that's, one thing I want to mention is that why is it a grid? Well, I do plan to have some other form factors in the future, like piano keyboard and such. But the nice thing about a grid is all stringed instruments are really grids. So a guitar is, for example, you have rows of chromatics offset by whatever interval you want. If you're a bowed string player, it'll be fifths usually. And so you can tune it however you want to have. But it really does allow you to transfer your skills from the instrument, the acoustic instrument you've learned, over to the instrument very, very easily. And if you think about it, you just you can use that same vibrato. Now, it's funny. I thought at first I'd play it more like this. But I like playing it like this, and my wife plays cello, so we were talking about the same sort of thing. It kind of lends itself to playing in this position, because you get to use both hands very well. And it's not unlike when, who knows the Chapman stick? But I think he came up with the same conclusion. If you've got more rows to deal with, it actually makes sense to be able to have a better access from both sides like that. So even though it kind of looks like I'm Bill Wyman, you know, neck going up this way. That's an old joke, sorry. He was in the Rolling Stones, one of those bands in the last millennium. So anyway, what I'm talking about today is two things here. LinnStrument's one thing, it's sort of introduce it to you, and I'm hoping to get it out late this year, because there's still some software to write for it, lots of software to write. But I'm also talking about this whole, what I call the revolution in multidimensional controllers. That is, controllers intended for performance that capture multiple dimensions per finger. And there are 5 in that category. The first one, which you probably all know about, the wonderful Eigen Continuum. Who knows about the Continuum? It's just a marvelous instrument. And I'm going to play a little video that you may not have seen, which shows that it really can replace a beautiful acoustic instrument. Another one is the Eigenharp. Who knows about the Eigenharp? Well, actually, one of the principal designers and the programmers of the Eigenharp, Garrett Bevan, is here today, and he's going to demonstrate the Eigenharp, not Pico, but what is it? Tau. The Tau, yes, the middle range unit, which fits easier on an airplane. And then there's this brand new instrument that came out of England called the Seaboard, which is a wonderful instrument too, where the notes are laid out like a piano keyboard. And then there's the, what am I missing? Oh, there's the,
Soundtrain.
what's that?
Soundtrain?
The sound playing, yes. Randy Jones out of Seattle has an instrument that's rectangular and similar form factor to this called the sound plane, which does the same sort of thing. And I think that's it, yeah, all the four. So I'm gonna show some little videos of those and let you get an idea. I guess first off though, does anybody have any questions about this thing?
Are you considering maybe open source for the software?
Actually, that's a good question. I'm planning to release the entire software open source, and I haven't made the final decision yet because it's scary. That's been
well,
open
I guess
source now.
It would feed back into your process more before you actually go on launch.
You know, I really want to do it. It's just that it's kind of given away at the store, and I have to make the final decision, but I'm at 90% there. I want to do it. And the nice thing about it is that internally the software is all based on an Arduino Due, which is the 84 megahertz ARM chip. And so all someone has to do is, if I do this, is to download the Arduino IDE and select Arduino Due, and then just take the software from our site and download it.
It looks like you can put it like real easily into wearable, like your clothing.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I think so. I think this should be a fashion statement, for instance. Good question.
Do you have pilots where you can play your long axis continuously, kind of like a continuum?
Yeah, I haven't done that software yet, though. But right now it's discrete per note, but it's easy to do. And I had that working before, and then I broke it when I restructured the software. But it'll easily do complete things. You can do slides like cello slides, violin slides.
Sending out MIDI controller messages, MIDI machine control to, you know, instead of having to go over to your laptop if you've got stuff on there, can you trigger it from?
Well, yeah, first of all, it uses those modes I was talking about, so it's just standard MIDI messages.
Okay.
But you can also, you know, if you want to turn the volume up, you just change the volume. If you want to change the preset, you change the preset.
Awesome. Okay.
You have to sort of stand back a little bit because the numbers are big.
Okay.
And then if you want to change octaves, here's the controls for the right split octave, the left split octave, or you can transpose the output of it, or you can transpose the lights. So the lights appear in different positions. So all that sort of stuff. And more, let's see, there's also a couple of switches you can program to a number of things, and the 2 foot pedals, and then and you can change the split point easily. And then there's a number, all the settings are printed over here so you can see what they all are. And it's actually quite a lot of settings you can adjust yourself. So.
How is it powered?
Oh, this is entirely USB bus powered. So the only thing connected right now is a USB cable and a wood switch input. But there's also normal MIDI in and out if you want to be slower. Oh, and there's also a power jack. So if you're using MIDI in and out, which doesn't have power, of course, then you plug in a power connector, and it'll take AC, DC, center positive or center negative, anything from 7.5 to 12 volts. So you can no longer plug in the wrong supply.
How you choose what colors you have? You have green and blue. What's the mindset that helps you decide what colors?
Deep greens and blues are the colors I choose. But my niece likes to choose the pink color, or it's actually magenta. But it's basically there's 6. It's the 3 primaries and the 3 secondaries. That's all. Yeah. So,
One more question. Can you play Tetris on it?
I'm sorry.
It's a joke. Can you play Tetris on it? Tetris.
Oh,
That's you got the rights. You got rights for Tetris.
no. But anyway, I would like to talk a little bit about these other. Since time is limited, though, I'd like to talk a little about some of the other products. And the first one I'd like to show you is Eigenharp. If you haven't seen it up close, it's an amazing instrument. And I'd like to invite to the stage Garrett Bevan. By the way, I should also say that Garrett's given me some help with the software for LinnStrument too, and he's a good friend. And a little explanation about the Eigenharp. It's an amazingly engineered product. Each one of the keys that he plays is this specially engineered thing called the Eigen Key. And it's sensitive to 3 dimensions of movement, pressure, x-axis, and y-axis. And he's going to be showing that.
Can I plug this out?
Oh, yeah.
So this is exactly what Roger was talking about. It's the same thing as with the LinnStrument. You got pressure. It can give you volume, timbre control, and pitch. So all these instruments that you also mentioned were all going in the same direction and trying to get individual control over each key that you play. There's just one thing that I want to mention about this, that is just one synth sound. So I have no split setup. It's based on the envelope that you play with your fingers. So you have control over the attack, the speed at which you're going to control the beginning of the envelope and also the release. So based on that, you actually can craft an entire instrument and percussion section just based out of one sound, similar to what you said with the pulse width modulation. And similar as with the guitar or any other traditional instrument, people become creative with very basic approaches because it measures every fine little detail. So.
Do you have any questions about the instrument?
Well, the mouthpiece measures at the same kind of resolution as the keys, and just like with the LinnStrument, you can map it to whatever you want. In this case, I've actually connected it through Animoog, and it controls distortion that will go through the delay and get these glittering sounds. And
Yeah, that's on an iPad, right?
yeah, so this is running on an iPad. And what makes this possible, and I just want to give a little plug to these guys because I think they're amazing. iConnectivity, they make the Eigen Midi devices, and they kind of push Midi to the next speed limit, I think. And that allows the Eigenharp and the Continuum and everything like that to talk directly to the iPad and get access to all these great synths that are actually able to measure, to react to polypressure, and some are even able to work with a node per channel that you mentioned before. So, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Anything particularly you'd like to say?
No, I did it.
Thank you very much. continuum that you may not have seen that's performed by Eigen, who's the guy that wrote the Eigen Matrix software, the software inside is the sound generator for the. He's playing a bowed string sound, and the reason I love this is because I think it's the best example of how one of these new multidimensional controllers can actually replace an acoustic instrument. I think I have not seen that to this degree before. Oh, I gotta get the power. Can I switch the audio? Yeah. Okay, it's in. So it should be playing, let's see. Soon. Favorite violin player, and he doesn't even play violin. I think this is so amazing because, as I see it, if you look at sort of a long continuum of time, it's sometime from the point of view in the future, they'll say that synthesis started to overtake acoustic instruments sometime around the latter half of the 20th century, but then after a while, the sensor technology improved, and you were able to get the same sounds from electronic sensors that you could from acoustic instruments. And right now, if you look at it, it's kind of interesting, but we're in this time of transition where we've got this wonderful software and wonderful synthesis methods, and what are we using as the human interface to those wonderful pieces of software and electronics? We're using data processing interface items, knobs, sliders, and switches. That's it. And what is the Midi keyboard? It's 61 on-off switches. And personally, I think that it's, my theory is it's responsible for the loss of a virtuosic instrumental voice in popular music. When I was a kid, there was always a guitar solo, or a sax solo, or a violin solo in country music, if that's what it was. Some sort of an instrumental solo where someone who had a virtuosic skill did something that was so compelling that you wanted to include it. And that doesn't exist quite as much anymore in popular music. And so I'd like to create a vehicle. What we're all trying to do is create a vehicle that allows people to develop virtuosic skill on one of these instruments, or hopefully all of them, and use it as an enabling technology so that people can create another compelling instrumental voice into music. Yeah. So. And it's also a cool grid controller. So let me play you a couple more videos. One is the seaboard. And the seaboard is a wonderful instrument. Okay. brilliant guy named Roland Lamb, who's an American living in London, and he's actually did this for his PhD thesis. And by the way, I'm going there to be his, one of his examiners for his PhD exam next month. So. And then lastly, an instrument called the sound. And this is created by a guy named Randy Jones. His company's called Padrona Labs, and it's really a beautiful instrument. It uses, well, I'll show you. This is a video of the seaboard, the sound playing being played by Jordan Rudess, who's sort of the poster boy for alternate controllers. And Jordan did his best to actually play slowly in this video, which can be difficult for him.
There's an orchestra behind me, so we're good.
So anyway, you've seen the 5 instruments now, and I think this is the next big thing, is the next revolution. It's basically finally allowing a human interface that is worthy of the synthesizers that have been created by people like Dave and Tom and Don Buchla and all the other ones, the digital ones. So I think it's a great time to be alive. So at this point, any questions about anything I've talked about?
What's the price point that you're shooting for on the?
Oh yeah, I don't know yet. I know that what I'm going to try to do, and I don't know if I can do it yet. I'm going to have this unit, and there's a smaller one that's only 16 columns that fits in a backpack. Something I learned from Dave. It's very important. That big product in the backpack. And that one I'm hoping to ship for an end user price of $1,000. So, but it's hard because it's really some slick stuff inside. You know. Yes.
What is the material on the instrument? Is it like squishy like a seaboard?
It's slightly squishy. It's about 2 millimeters thick. And you know, afterwards, I'd like to invite anybody up to come up and touch it, play it, and all that sort of stuff. But it's what I did is it's a molded sheet of silicone rubber, and you can feel the different notes. Each note square is 3/4 inches or 19 millimeters, and so you can feel your way around it. You don't have to look at it like you would like on a touchscreen, like an iPad or something like that. And so, but there's just enough of a reduction, 0.5 millimeter, or actually, yes, 0.5 millimeter between the pad and then the sheet under the suspension sheet underneath. So, but it has to be thin because you want it to be as sensitive as possible. Any others?
Yeah, I read on your website like a couple years ago or something that the touchscreen technology for the LinnStrument was developed by a company that got bought by Amazon, and that created problems for you and the product. And how did you end up solving that?
Oh yeah, it was a complete debacle. There used to be a company called Touchco that made a technology. They made a pressure-sensitive multi-touch surface, opaque, and I was in talks with them about using it for LinnStrument, and then all of a sudden their site went dark, and they got bought by Amazon and shut down and taken off the market, which is interesting because there was a company about a year or two before that called Fingerworks, and they made something called the iGesture, which didn't sense pressure, but it sensed finger surface area. and I was interested in that as a musical instrument. They got bought by Apple and shut down and taken off the market. And then so after Touchcoat happened, and that's when I put the first video up on the website, then I started working with a South Korean company. And then at some point their investor decided to shut down my project and stop working on it. So I finally decided, I guess I got to do it myself. So I took a cue from my good friend Dave, who really has always been a good hardware guy, and I've been trying to not have to get back in designing the hardware and all the little software and stuff. But I did, and over the past 2 years, taking Dave's cue, I immersed myself back into the low-level design stuff, and I came up with a design that I think works very well. And it took a long time, and right now the sensor that I designed it's on its 5th revision, and it really feels very nice at this point. And that's why it's taken so long. Originally, I didn't want to go to reinvent a touchscreen, for a musical instrument, but then nobody made anything that worked. And even those ones that I mentioned before, they were close, but they really weren't good enough. And so this one is really fast and really responsive, and so it took a while, but it's almost here.
Sounds like it was the best way to go.
I think so, yeah. Any other questions? I can sense a question coming. I feel it from around. There it is, there it is.
How intuitive is it to play the LinnStrument coming from a more traditional instrument? Like you said, there's some similarities to guitar in the way it's laid out. But say like a guitar player picks up the LinnStrument, how long is it before they're somewhat proficient with it? Because that could, I'm sure you put a lot of thought into that, because that could be a big barrier to it becoming kind of the de facto Midi controller.
Sure, yeah.
Instrument like you envision.
Well, it's, when people come over and check it out, it seems they can translate their skills very easily. If they have vibrato or different gestures on guitar or on cello or other instruments, it seems it translates well, but it clearly is not the same. It's you're going to have to give up something and gain something in return. But after we stop questions, you're welcome to come up and check it out. Actually, you could be the guinea pig. You could come up right now and tell me what you think. Okay, so right now it's just that these are chromatic. Right. So now try, are you a guitar player? Yes. Well, try your left hand. And try Padrona.
It almost seems like it make more sense with our right hand.
Thank you very much. So, any other questions? I sense one coming. Oh, there's one there.
Not as much a question as a suggestion. You said you can put it in certain scales, which is great because some of us aren't great keyboard players. And if you can have scales, but then a way to on-off accidentals, so if someone does want to step outside that scale, that would be a really convenient feature.
So you mean just the notes that are accidentals, just have them not play?
Right, and then where you can actually hit a button to allow them to play. So basically when you want to keep in a strict scale, you can do that, but then momentarily step out of that.
Well, what you can do, right now I hadn't thought of that, and it hasn't been suggested before, that's a good point, is to just get rid of those notes. So if you want, you can have only the diatonic scale.
Well, that's totally what I do for each song. That way I could say...
Well, you can do it. You can change it right on the panel. It's doable.
Cool.
But and that way you wouldn't be skipping those. It wouldn't be dead notes. They wouldn't exist.
Right. But then if you did want to play that note, momentarily be able to turn that note back on. on the fly.
You could, sure, yeah. Okay. Well, it's an interesting question. Part of what this is about is providing an instrument that gives you enough flexibility to develop virtuosity. But one thing I've noticed about guitars is the notes are always in the same place from one guitar to the other and from one song to the other. So it's difficult to develop virtuosic playing styles when the notes are moving all over the place. I think what will happen is it's probably more likely that someone will choose a particular layout, like cello layout, all in fifths, chromatics with fifth intervals, or guitar layout, or all in fourths. And stick to that one, and that will be the choice they make. My impression is that people may not change from song to song, but they may. You know, I've been wrong. Well, once I was wrong. It was.
The other idea is integrating it where you can turn it into a step sequencer for a live step sequence.
Well, the thing is, there's so many step sequencers out there. I figure actually the Eigenharp has a sequencer built in, but for this case, I'm focusing on the stuff that's the essential stuff because you can always do the sequencing outside. Okay, you have a question.
Yeah, what about do you consider like an accelerometer inside of it, maybe to, you know, besides the expression on the to actually.
I thought about that, and there's other inputs you can have. For example, the Eigenharp has the wonderful breath controller, right? And accelerometer, people have done that. I don't find them all that useful, but you know, you can always just stick one on it, or put one on your head or your nose or wherever you want. So.
Just a suggestion, or not a suggestion, a statement, sorry. Thank you for taking your time to make this a solid instrument, or a solid controller, because there's so many controllers out there that aren't going to do it for me, and I'm looking very forward to it.
I tend to thank you. Unfortunately, I do tend to take way too long, as my friend Dave and I will have discussed many times. But yeah, I wanted to get it right. To me, it's kind of like it's like a painting, or it's like a writing an opera or something. It's just I want to I feel. So any other thanks. Any other questions here? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Where does the funding come from to build something like this?
My wife Ingrid. She works. Well, it's largely true because I'm, well, I have other products I've made, and I've been very fortunate that Dave and I have made this Tempest drum machine, analog drum machine, which, by the way, we're talking about tomorrow in this very room at 3:30, so please come back. And but we're very proud of that machine, and that brings some money in, and that helps. And then I have my Adrenaline guitar processors and my Adrenaline sync software. It all adds up, but basically Ingrid right now is the breadwinner in the family. So, you had a question.
Do you have the plans for sampling?
Well, actually, this makes no sound. Oh, for a sampler?
LinnStrument 2.
Well, oh yeah, I have been working on a product called LinnStrument 2. It's on the back burner while I finish this, because to me this is more interesting, and sampling has been done so many times. I'll say something about sampling too, is that sampling is great for accuracy, but the problem, of course, with it is that this snapshot, and it's not very malleable. And as long as you're playing music with on-off switches, you don't notice it. But once you start to play music with an instrument like this, or any of these five that I've discussed, you start to notice the limitations of sampling, because you can make it softer, louder, filtered, lower, higher, but it's not created on the spot. And for example, that's one of the big things that Dave and I intended when we made Tempest, is to make an instrument that's really about performance, and that the sound is created in real time. And for example, Dave makes these wonderful analog voices that have 160 plus parameters on them, and you can use these two-dimensional slide controls on the side, along with the pressure sensitive pads and the velocity sensitive, to create beats that are just so malleable and dynamic and living. And with sampling, it's not quite the same. Now, then getting in, Tempest does have a bank of about 450 samples in it, but it's not its main function. So for that reason, I do value sampling, and obviously a lot of people have used sampling in my products in the past. But I think probably the biggest answer is there's only one thing I can do at a time, because there's only so much money Ingrid makes to fund my research. Anyway, next, any other questions? And if If not, I'll let people, you know, actually we only have 15 minutes. Would you like to just come on up and play it? Thank you very much.